The Houston Rockets made a massive mistake this offseason by paying Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks a combined $210 million and $63 million per year. Fred VanVleet's contract is 3 years for $130 million, which is $43 million per year, and Dillon Brooks has a 4-year, $80 million contract, which is $20 million per year. Combined, that's $63 million per year for two players that were not wanted by their old teams for that price point. And this is a massive issue for the Houston Rockets because in only a couple seasons before these contracts run out, they're going to have to pay their younger stars like Alperen Sengun, Jalen Green, Josh Christopher, these kind of guys, and they might not have the money to do so just because they signed two aging veterans who aren't even stars or superstars in this league to massive contracts. I have no issue with Fred VanVleet as a player. I'm a Raptors fan and I actually have his jersey. He was one of my favorite Raptors for a very long time, and I think that he's a really good point guard, but I don't think that he can be a number one or number two option. And obviously, I don't think the Houston Rockets think that they're going to be a contender anytime soon. But if with what you're getting from Fred VanVleet is a leadership guy, obviously is going to teach your young guys to have that grit and determination. Like as Fred VanVleet went from being undrafted to an NBA champion and a key player on a championship team, and he always has that motto of bet on yourself. But I don't understand this big of a deal for the Houston Rockets and Fred VanVleet because in only a couple of years, you're going to have to pay Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun and a bunch of your other young talent. And with a massive contract like this, yes, the salary cap is going up, but you're not going to have the money to pay these younger stars because you tied up so much money long term to an aging point guard who's going to be in his 30s, who is not a superstar. It's not like you went out and got Damian Lillard. Fred VanVleet is an one-time all-star point guard who, yes, he helped to lead a team to an NBA championship, but he's no first star. He's no second star. He's probably not even the third option on a contending team. So he's not going to help you compete, and he's taking away your ability to sign your younger players long term. And that creates issues for the Houston Rockets because Jalen Green, Josh Christopher, Alperen Sengun, and others are exponentially more valuable to your franchise than Fred VanVleet is. And you're paying Fred VanVleet, who is, out of those four players that I just named, probably the fourth most valuable player to your franchise. You're paying him $43 million and creating yourself a pickle where you might not be able to pay the other three in a couple of years, whether that be 2 or 3 years, depending on the player. And now we go over to Dillon Brooks, who just signed a 4-year, $80 million contract, and the team that he was just on, the Memphis Grizzlies, he kind of helped them to self-destruct in the playoffs this past year in the first round against the Lakers, who were the 7th seed and has struggled all season. Dillon Brooks called out LeBron or whatever, and then LeBron went nuclear on them and ended up beating them in, I think it was 5 or 6 games, and Dillon Brooks was told by the Memphis Grizzlies that under no circumstances would he be coming back to the franchise. And that's concerning if you're the Houston Rockets, because if the team that already had him and had him in the locker room for the past few years saw him develop as a player and where he was a key contributor to the Grizzlies' success, if that team is telling him that under no circumstances he is back and you go and sign him to a 4-year, $80 million contract, that's not a good look for you because who knows what issues were underlying in Memphis. Obviously, you have the big issue of talking a lot and not being able to back it up. And not being able to back it up is an issue because he just did not perform well in the playoffs. This last season, regular season and postseason, he had a horrendous season. He did not perform up to his standards. And he was part of the reason why the number 2 seed Grizzlies went home in the first round. And now you signed him to a 4-year, $80 million deal. And the same thing as Fred VanVleet. You have money tied up into him for the long term, and he's not a part of your future plans. He can't be. He's a good player. He's a good role player, but he's not valuable enough to your team in the long term to take that money that could be going to Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun and Josh Christopher, or future draft picks that you might acquire in the upcoming years. So I think that the Houston Rockets made a very big mistake in signing these players, not because of the players that they are, but because of how much money they were given by the organization. If you could have got Fred VanVleet on a 3-year, $65 million deal, $22, $23 million per year, even up to $25 million a year, I don't think anyone would have been looking down upon these deals. And if you could have got Dillon Brooks' market was plummeting this offseason. So if you could have got Dillon Brooks for 4 years and 60 million or 55 million, that would have been a much bigger success, and people would not be hating on these deals nearly as much. So I think that these two deals kind of logjam the Rockets' future, and it could potentially stop the Rockets from rebuilding in the correct way, in the way they could see themselves doing, or the way that at least most people see themselves doing within the next few years.